Hey everyone, thanks for clicking the link. Here's me, my name's Billy, and here's a shameless plug for my Twitter account. I'm currently a basketball coach working with Kent Crusaders in Canterbury. I get to work with these guys every day coaching basketball. In the off-season last summer, this guy gave us all a project to do, so we had to choose a research project based on the season. Now, it's taken me a whole year to put this on YouTube after I did it, but here was my project. With regards to creating one-on-one breakdown and finishing around the basket, what were our most effective and frequent methods used this season? This included player, angle, hand and type. So I did this video in a number of different ways. I'm going to take you through that now. Now, because it was a research project, I had to do some analysis. So the first thing I did was log into Crossover, where all of our games and stats were, and I used games against our top 6 opponents from the season. So here's my key for the finishing. So was it successful? Did they score it or not, or get fouled? What type of finish was it? And those are the types of finishes I saw. Was it with their strong hand, weak hand? Where was the location of the finish? And also what player it was. For breakdown, I looked at the success, the type of move, which I've given names to that we use at the academy, strong hand, weak hand, the angle, and then also the player. So you can see all of the different information I found here in the key. If I saw it, I would then add it to the key so that I could track the frequency. And what I'd end with is this funky looking graph on Excel for each game that we'd looked at. Once I'd gathered all this data with the help of Coach Jesse, he taught me how to put it into Excel and use a formula so that I could count the frequency of this. So if you follow my cursor here, let's say I wanted to look at times that breakdown was unsuccessful, so they didn't get breakdown from it. JC is jab, step, cross step is the move. Going towards their weak hand, the location would be, corner, middle every time they drove there, and then the player there is MG. So they were unsuccessful twice doing that. From here, I could just manipulate the formula and find out anything I basically wanted and explore any kind of areas I wanted. So what did I actually look at? What was I actually thinking about? So these are our breakdown moves which we name at the academy, and I wanted to see how often we use them because they're what we teach in individuals. What is breakdown? So I looked at any time that an offensive player got their shoulder past the line of a defensive player, thus causing breakdown or rotation. What is a successful finish? Now I only track this as a score or a shooting foul. Obviously, yes, there are thousands of flaws for this. I'm not a scientist, I'm a basketball coach. So here was the more interesting part, the results. And I got 10 findings from this, 5 finishing and 5 with breakdown. So the first one for finishing was use of weak hand. So the first statement I looked at was, are we actually worse with our weak hand? And the answer was pretty much no in terms of success rate. We just used it a lot less, which would mean less confidence. There was a couple of things I looked at with this. So the first one is sometimes, especially like baseline finishes, players would use their strong hand too much, and it just creates a really tough angle like this, or means you could also get blocked, which is obviously not great. And then secondly, like some finishes, do you need to use your weak hand? So that obviously is a perfectly good finish there, which should be weak hand, could be weak hand. So the action is, we need players to be more comfortable with their weak hand, but as I previously thought, like as good with their weak hand, maybe not necessarily. The next thing I found was that our floaters and our fadeaways were poor. So floaters were 23%, fadeaways 0% on 9 attempts. So just really, really low percentage shots. So we could now go 2 directions with this. Either it's a technique thing, we're not teaching the correct technique and touch, so maybe we need to work on this more. Or we take it out, you're either finishing at the rim or you're moving the ball. When I compared 2-foot finishing, I looked at 2-foot against 1-foot and actually found that we went 2-foot finishes a lot more and actually finished at a better percentage. So this could have been our nature of play, or actually maybe players just prefer finishing off 2 feet, and this is something we need to look at. And actually the only time we went same hand, same foot, which is something we stress, I only found 1 successful attempt to it. Now we went off 2 feet a lot, so there you can see a really good 2-footed finish. Here 2-foot finish through some contact, not successful, and again here. Now, the other thing I found from looking at this is we actually never went reverse layups off 1 foot, 1 hand. Every time we went reverse layups was 2 foot, 1 hand. So my conclusion is maybe we need to spend more time or equal time on 2-foot finishing as one and develop that decision more than anything else. Next thing I found were like baby hooks or 2-foot hooks. In games we made 7 of 11. On the games I looked at, over 63%, and we only shot 51% around the basket in the games I looked at. So I think it's just, and it's a body-to-body finish, and it's something that Coach Adam really taught a lot during the season. So I think it paid off, and it's something that we should look at doing more. The last thing I looked at for finishing was by player, and I don't want to get into this too much, but essentially I just looked at our best player who took the most shots, and sometimes we just needed to improve his decisions. So there's probably more of a shot attempt than a pass attempt, and then here's the other way around. So just more about coaching the decisions, trusting our instincts. There's a lot of times in the season where we said something but then didn't do enough in individuals to work on it. Now we look at my findings with breakdown. Got a few more clips with this one to go through. So firstly, as an overview, our breakdown percentage was 60, but not many attempts. Now this could be our style of play, and it could be also a number of factors that probably need to be looked at again, because it seemed like we actually created breakdown a lot less than I thought, but really most of it was just off the pass and the dribble. So here are some examples where we're looking to create breakdown every time a player catches, kind of like ball on the floor looking, but we're not making any hard drives towards the basket. And this was kind of because of our style of play. Played like a continuity motion, where there wasn't as much emphasis on players playing one-on-one and looking to create that breakdown off the dribble. So here's another possession again where there's no actual breakdown, no players try and take their man on really until the end when we lose the ball. We still get some good looks in this possession though. So this was kind of a theme throughout my investigation into the breakdown. We got a lot of breakdown off the pass this season, and obviously I didn't track this because it wasn't like a one-on-one move. So for example, pass to the inside there, we get a jump shot out of it. Because of this style of play, maybe our players didn't look to triple threat and attack enough. They just looked for the next pass. So there could have been a one-on-one play easily. And again here, like we're looking to pass rather than playing the guy in front of us. Sometimes when we got breakdown, a set or our athleticism helped. So just the ability to be able to make a crossover, which isn't necessarily a good move, but get breakdown from that. Or also like defenders' mistakes. So again, not breakdown, but defender lunges at the ball is off balance with the top foot and gives us the breakdown we need. The main conclusion from this is knowing that we played less one-on-one off the dribble. Did we give enough time in individuals to passing and passing technique versus breakdown moves? When I looked at weak hand use, it actually brought out that I probably made some errors in my data collection on this. So for example, like I would put down weak hand use even though a player countered and went back to their strong hand. So there, like the weak hand is the crossover move towards the left, but actually they've come back to their strong hand, so it shouldn't count as that. I did find some confidence in players to be able to counter and go back to their weak hand though. So here's a bulldog, which is just an early crossover, jab, step, go. And these are back-to-back plays. So the player's just done a bulldog going right. He now counters it, goes left and loses the defender. Again, creating successful breakdown off the move. So remembering that I just looked at the breakdown and not the success of the finish for this section, here are the moves and the results that we actually use. So you can see the really, really low use move. Maybe players weren't confident in it. Maybe they weren't very effective. Now it does show some good examples of the moves we taught this season. So like a bulldog, for example, successfully creating breakdown. Hardaway, which is just a through the legs and then whip back in front. We taught that a lot in individuals. Again, effective in that instance. In and out crossover, again effective with the crossover being a counter there. And then sometimes we just got good breakdown off like no moves, just defenders' mistakes, which again was really, really prevalent in the clips I watched. So sometimes it's just about teaching players head up and reading what's in front of them as well, because they don't always need a move to beat the guy in front of them, but they do need the recognition, which is almost just as important of a skill. So the action is to take out some of the moves that we barely used and refine what we do use, putting the emphasis just on reading what's in front of you, because sometimes you may not need a move to create that breakdown. So when I started to look at technique, I didn't actually use results. I thought this was more subjective from just watching tape and evaluating what I saw. Some of the main mistakes were like ineffective moves, so just not selling the move well enough. like shot fakes, for example, where the ball wasn't lifted, eyes weren't on the rim, just weren't very effective at getting defenders to lift off their feet. And it was the same for jab steps, like not really moving the ball as well with the jab step meant that defenders didn't really move with the ball. Removing some of the extra footwork, so players just had extra steps or negative steps where they went backwards to then go forwards, which actually slowed us down. And then just sometimes we lacked commitment to the move, which meant that it wasn't effective. And obviously there was quite a few examples of travels and stuff on catches. Spacing was a big problem, so sometimes we would make what would be an effective move but not into very good spacing and then have to force up a shot. So some things that were important were the setup, so just having patience and setting the defender up, reading the spacing, and then being able to create this breakdown and force rotations was really important. Being able to like shift your weight, so for example this is a hezi and then Jono crosses it over and counters, and you can just see his weight shift and he really commits to the move and getting into the paint there. And then lastly, just the real technique, so this jab step where just the ball moves, he digs down low, is short and sharp, and then he's explosive going the other way, is when the moves were most effective. Action is very much linked to the last point, which was just do less but do it better, do better technique and get better reps, but just with less moves, and spend more time reading. The last part was looking at breakdown by individual players. Now this was really interesting in terms of grouping players. So shooters have to be guarded closer, and therefore I found they got a lot better breakdown. And they had to make less moves ultimately. Our bigger guys or our non-shooters could be guarded by sagging defenses, and therefore it was a lot harder for them to make a move. However, like some of our more athletic players, they get away with more errors in their technique just because they're more explosive. Here you can see one of our more explosive athletic players who can make simpler moves to get into gaps and spaces and break down defense. All he needs is just a cue and he can explode into the gap. Now, non-shooters didn't necessarily have this, because here you can see the defender can back off and it makes it a lot harder for you to attack that body and create the space. Also, sometimes some of our stronger players didn't need breakdown. They could just go straight through the defender and finish over them as well. Now our shooters struggled to catch on the bounce and then make a move. So here you can just see it's almost uncertainty to break down off the dribble. But it's probably because of the nature of the play. Now because they are shooters, they have to be long closed out, and therefore they got really easy breakdown, just getting past their man and being able to shoot pull-ups. The final observation and action point is just to have your style of play really connect to the players and give the players the packages they need to be successful, but also develop them within your system.